Hi, I'm Malika Bilal, and you're in the stream. Today, thousands of Central American asylum seekers have finally reached the U.S.-Mexico border. But where will they go from there? You can join our conversation with your questions and your comments via YouTube, Live, or Twitter. After weeks of traveling on foot through Mexico, thousands of Central Americans have reached the country's northern border, hoping to cross over and apply for asylum in the United States. But an increasingly hostile Trump administration is working to prevent that. On Sunday, after crowds of asylum seekers overwhelmed Mexican police near the San Ysidro crossing, U.S. President Donald Trump ordered a temporary closure of the southern border. The incident prompted U.S. Border Patrol agents to fire tear gas into an unarmed crowd that included women and children, drawing condemnation from the administration's critics. Asylum seekers were arrested on both sides of the border, and Mexican authorities have vowed to step up border security. Many Central Americans are now waiting in tent camps in the Mexican border city of Tijuana. So what happens next? With us to talk about this in Tijuana, Mexico, Al Jazeera correspondent John Holman. In Mexico City, Jimena Natera, a reporter with the Mexican news portal PA Di Pagina. And in Los Angeles, Grace Meng, a senior U.S. immigration researcher with Human Rights Watch. Welcome to the stream, all of you. I want to start on my computer with a photo that was seen around the world. It really went viral here. This via Reuters TV, capturing the moment Maria Meza fled with her children to escape tear gas on the U.S.-Mexico border. And this was captured by photographer Kim Kyung-hoon of Maria Meza and her twin daughters. Now, reporters caught up with Maria after this incident in Tijuana, and this is what she told them.
Well, I felt sad, scared, and wanted to cry. That's when I grabbed my daughters and started to run. At that moment, I thought I was going to die with them because of the gas. We ran, and we fell into the mud and struggled to get up and missed the gas. I wasn't expecting it. I never thought they were going to fire these bombs where there were children, because there were lots of children, not just mine. There were more children with mothers there. They also started running too, just like me.
John, naturally, that image resonated with so many people on both sides of this issue. It really caught eyes there. But what is the situation like now in Tijuana?
You probably see one of the things here is that there's a lot of sickness going around, a lot of flu, and you can hear it's pretty much got to me as well. You can see some of the tents behind me. I'm not in the camp. I'm actually outside it. That's because it's full here to overflowing. There's about 6,000 people in a sports complex that was meant to hold about 3,500. The toilets are backed up. There's not enough showers. We've just heard from some of the Mexican human rights official guys who are saying that there's a problem as well, that an area reserved for children and women, there's not enough room here, so sort of men are putting their tents here as well. He said it's a time bomb, and I think I would agree with that. This is really, there's more people coming in because they're moving up through Mexico to get to Tijuana, and it's becoming a real bottleneck because they can't get over to the other side. The border here is just behind me, actually. And as you said, the US administration is really, and President Trump in particular, is very against this. They're sort of stuck here with no end in sight. There's another thing as well, which I think is really interesting, which is a lot of people, especially in the first caravan from Honduras, they're really fleeing abject poverty back in their homeland. Things seem to have got a lot worse there in the past year. They just don't have enough to live on. The problem with that is that the US doesn't give asylum to people that are fleeing for economic reasons. So they're processing the asylum requests pretty slowly anyway. And those people are not probably going to be able to get into the United States. There's also a lot of violence obviously going on in that country, Honduras. But really one of the key problems here is poverty. So it's one of those situations where you can really see it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get more of a bottleneck here rather than better.
Right. So in picking up on it's only going to get worse, I want to remind our audience of the photo that I showed right at the beginning of this show. But some of the feedback and reaction from people looked like this. We got this tweet from Shelia who says, discuss how this picture was staged. Look at all the reporters in the background and the mother who should be charged with child endangerment and deported immediately. And so they point out things that they say is wrong with this photo. photo, the fact that this woman and her children are barefoot and in diapers. Oh, the humanity, this photo says. I just wanted to be a Disney princess, they write, because she's wearing a shirt with Disney characters on it. Jimena, what do you make of reactions like this? Because there are some people who say this is not really what happened, and this is a media narrative that's being given to people.
I think those discussions are unfundamented. You should be there to see the mayhem that it is to cross a country with only a backpack. It is a huge, huge ordeal on people. And it is very easy to discredit this ordeal because, we don't, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But we have to remember that these people have walked over 2,000 kilometers from the border in the south to the border to the northern border, and it's been a really long and exhausting journey, and people is just completely tired, as people is very, very sick right now. Mm-hmm. So I think it's very easy to discredit this if you haven't seen it, but I don't really understand how people can say like, no, that's fake. Because they haven't seen the images we've seen. We've seen this all over for the past 4 or 5 weeks. And it's hard. I mean, if you say that you don't believe it, it's because you don't want to believe it, I think.
Grace, I see you go ahead, John.
It has become something that's been, as you mentioned and Jimena mentioned a bit there, it's become something that's so polarized, especially for the journalists here. Everything that you put out on Twitter, there's instantly sort of people attacking it. I would say, especially people on the right, especially Trump supporters, sort of see this as an army of men that are coming here. There are more men than women and children in the caravan, but there are also numbers of women and children. And as Jimena was saying there, like we were talking with a family just yesterday, we followed all the way through. Their son was in intensive care for pneumonia. We talked to quite a few people here. These people have been sleeping rough in the streets of plazas going all through Mexico as they've gone the way up. So I think if you sort of disagree or agree with if they should be allowed into the United States, I don't think you can question their desperation to make it. They haven't been sort of sleeping at hotels on the way up here. They've really been roughing it to get to this point.
Grace, I saw you nodding your head earlier. I want to bring your attention to this being a statement on Twitter from the Customs and Border Patrol, who say that elements of the group that is the so-called migrant caravan, these asylum seekers, were engaged in dozens of assaults on agents and officers. 4 agents were hit with rocks but were wearing protective gear and did not suffer serious injuries. So that's one arm of the administration. The other being the White House spokesperson, this via Real Clear Politics, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, said at a press briefing this week, tear gas was used at border on average once per month during the Obama administration. So this is nothing new. Grace, what's your take on that?
Well, I think from our perspective, we certainly would not say it's new that Border Patrol can engage in abusive and dangerous tactics. Unfortunately, Border Patrol has a long history under Obama as well of problems with use of force. There were well-documented accounts of people who were even shot by Border Patrol across the border, people who were in Mexico. Some of those lawsuits are still pending. And it's really, when the administration says, oh, Border Patrol did, engaged in behavior that we criticize now, I don't think that that's necessarily an appropriate defense. I just wanted to jump in about the previous point about the tweet discounting the credibility of that photo, the veracity of that photo. What I find really heartbreaking is that so many people are echoing the president's words. He has said repeatedly that no one will be allowed in, that that they are going to harden the border against everyone. And as John pointed out, not everyone is going to win asylum. Not everyone qualifies for asylum. But this automatic assumption that there are no legitimate asylum seekers who deserve protection under U.S. and international law is a tone that's been set up by this administration. So it's not surprising that so many people would take up that same stance.
So you mentioned President Trump, which means it's only right that I actually play for our audience a little clip of him at a rally, this being in Mississippi on November 26th. In the wake of this, in the wake of seeing the events on Sunday, here's what he told supporters.
Republicans are committed to halting this incursion and defending the sovereign borders of the United States. We are sending a simple message to the lawless caravans and to the illegal trespassers marching toward our border. It's very simple. Turn back now, go back home. We will not let you in. We are not going to let you in. Turn back now.
His message isn't falling on deaf ears. There are people in our community also who would agree with him. This is Angela, who wrote to us live on YouTube right now, saying the USA is not a doormat. They are accepting applications, but not the masses. So John, help break that down for us. Accepting applications, do you see that happening? What is that process like?
Yeah, they are accepting applications, but it's a very slow process. There's about 7,000 to 8,000 people in total, and what we're hearing is that those applications are going through very slowly. What the US wants to happen as well, and what is actually happening in practice, is that people are on the Mexican side while they process those applications. What's always happened before is that from the moment you request asylum, you're passed through to the United States while they process that. Now, what the US and the Mexican government are apparently talking about at the moment is that if they can put that on a more formal footing, that the people will stay here in Mexico while the United States process their applications. So basically, they're doing it, but they're doing it very slowly and trying to keep people in Mexico while that's happening, which President Trump's posture is really clear. It's really interesting talking to people actually here on this side. Almost without exception, everyone we've talked to is when we've asked them about their possibilities to get asylum or be let in, they're all saying, we just hope that God softens President Trump's heart. And it seems a sort of almost an innocence born of desperation, really, because they haven't really got any other option from that. So they have to sort of believe that some sort of divine providence is going to intercede here.
Jimena?
I would like to intervene here because I think that also reflects the way that it's been taken in Mexico, from the Mexican government, but also from the Mexican society. Because it's, I mean, this fact that people actually stay at the border while they wait for their cases to be, it's not new. It has been happening from, I don't know, 6-7 years, but it increased from 2016. And it has become kind of a problem because these are cities that are not prepared to receive people. So the people are living in terrible, terrible conditions, and it seems like it's not going anywhere soon. And I think that's also one of the intentions of the U.S. government, like that the word of mouth will spread quickly. That staying there, it's very hard. So that will impact on how many people decide to go there, knowing that they will have to wait for weeks, months, and it could be for years. Just yesterday morning, after the new government, the incoming government said that they would not accept the plan of Donald Trump of making Mexico a third safe country. The future Minister of Foreign Affairs said that, okay, while they are not still have agreed on a plan with the U.S., they are going to allow everyone to stay there, to not deport them while they await for their cases, and at the same time try to, for the couple next years, to create a plan with the governments from Central America to tackle the problems that caused the migration. But those are not answers, and those are not strategies that are going to solve the problem,
Right.
like in the short term. And that, I think, that helps to create this polarization in
Right.
society of what is going to happen.
I hear what you're saying, then I want to share with our
think,
audience here. I just wanted to share this headline, kind of elucidating what you heard Jimena say. Incoming Mexico government, no deal to host U.S. asylum seekers, and the government will be sworn in December 1st, that of President-elect Lopez Obrador, who you see here on the left of the screen. And we are hearing from people in the border town about what they think of this. I want to bring that in a little bit later. But before we get too deep into this conversation, I just want to make sure we answer a couple questions we've gotten from people. So this Charles Fleeman, who says Al Jazeera shows its bias by using the term asylum in its headlines. These people are economic migrants who've been granted refuge and asylum by Mexico and refused its generosity. Another person writes here, so what happens when we tell them that poverty doesn't qualify you for asylum? Grace, I wanted you to react to these two comments. Who will qualify for asylum, and what is that process like?
To qualify for asylum, you have to prove that you will face persecution on a number of grounds, on one of a number of grounds: race, religion, nationality, ethnicity, and particular social group, which is what many people who are suffering gang violence, domestic violence, but are in countries that cannot protect them, that will not protect them, will be arguing for protection under. And it is not always easy to do that. The challenge that people face right now at the border, waiting even to present their asylum application, is only the first of many barriers they're going to face. The U.S. has been erecting barriers to asylum. They've existed for many years, but have gotten worse under this administration. People can expect to be locked up immediately, even if you show up at the border, present yourself, which is what you're supposed to do. There is a very clear right under U.S. international law to present yourself for asylum. But you will face detention. You may be detained for months, for years, as your case goes through the system. This administration has made it harder for people to get released even after they pass the first stage of that process. This administration also has made it much harder to win asylum based on persecution through state inaction, which under international law has been well established. And so, of course, all these new rules placed by the administration are being challenged in U.S. federal courts. And we would certainly argue that many of them are not legal under international law. And so I can't discount that people will be facing serious challenges to winning asylum, but I would not say that they do not qualify under international law.
So we got this in live on YouTube just now. This is Marsha, who says, what gives the U.S. the right to deny the legal asylum as refugees when they are fleeing from certain death? So that's one perspective that we got on YouTube. But I want to share with you another perspective, this from asylum seekers who are there, who say they're really running out of hope. Have a look.
We have no hope at all. We've been here for so many days. I'm tired. It's like there's no hope of crossing, none at all.
Well, the truth is that it looks impossible that they will want to grant us asylum due to the words that President Donald Trump said. I think it's impossible, and it should not be so, because if he were conscientious, he would realize we are only looking for a job.
So, John, it goes back to the point you were making that if only, they're saying if only U.S. officials realize we're just looking for opportunity and for jobs.
Yeah, I think we were just talking a few moments ago, actually, to a lady who's got 6 children back in Honduras. She's a single mum. She was working as a cleaner and she didn't earn enough there to put food on the table. And that's where we're going. We asked her actually the same question that Grace was talking about, that you were talking about. Do you know that you're not eligible for asylum because of economic reasons? And she as well said, yeah, but what can I do? I'm just coming here to the border really in hope of what happens. I think it's interesting, the tweet that someone said, Al Jazeera shows its bias by saying everyone's an asylum seeker. Maybe that's something interesting for us as a channel, because definitely there's an incredible amount of nuance in this. Some people are coming seeking asylum. Some people are coming and they say, look, I know I'm not going to get asylum. I want a work visa. There's also some people here that say, I know it's going to be really difficult to do this legally. I'm going to try and get across the border however which way I can and then just see what happens. We're talking about 7,000, 8,000 plus people here. So there's a little bit of everything. I think from outside this, what we've seen is people just from both sides really trying to simplify this from the right saying these are all criminals, which of course is patently absurd if you're seeing the pictures of what's going on here, and we can't let any of them in. And perhaps from the other side, sort of everyone here should get in. There's real polarization, and inside of this, there's a really nuanced picture. I think Grace probably would have more to say about that even than I would.
Grace?
Yeah, I mean, I think from our perspective, we certainly do not assert that everyone is an asylum seeker and that everyone will qualify for asylum, but that everyone deserves due process, that everyone deserves an opportunity to present their case should they have a fear of persecution, a fear of return to their home countries. And that the U.S. is certainly capable and has the resources to properly process everyone who claims fear of return to their home countries.
So, Jimena, I promised that I would bring this up because I wanted to share some of these reactions that you were mentioning. This from one resident of Tijuana who says, "We do not want them. Reasons are many, but the most important is that they are not refugees. They are nor are they migrants. They are opportunist, ungrateful, abusive thugs." So that's one person's view. On the other side of that spectrum, though, Brida here says, "I show my support to other human beings. They have needs. They need to eat. They are suffering. Tijuana community are very upset for how the migrant caravan arrived to the city and how they're affecting our daily border crossing to the U.S. And they want them out, but the situation is bad." I know you went to a protest in Tijuana. What did you hear from people there?
Well, I wasn't at the protest, but I edited the information there. But yeah, I think that has two things, the two main things. One is that Mexico has a deeply problem of racism and xenophobia. We have had a hard relationship with the idea of migration. It is not new. It is 34 years old. In the 90s, where there was a big boom of Mexicans fleeing Mexico, going to the U.S. to work because of the economy, of that really terrible moment with the economy in Mexico, there was this like official speech that used to refer as Mexicans going out of Mexico as dissidents, basically, as traitors to the country. So there's still this speech and this idea of what a migrant is. So that's from one part, and the other is that Central America, Mexico has not been very welcoming with Central American people. There was in the 90s with the Cold War and the civil conflicts, there was a lot of entrance from Central Americans, but after that, there's been a hardening of the requirements to come to Mexico legally as a Central American. It's almost impossible for most people to come here. So that's very hard. And in Tijuana, what we saw is that, and I think it has to do a lot with how they harden the process of people going in asking for refuge. Because for the past 6 months, there's been, yes.
John, go ahead.
A question for you, because you're there in Mexico City. We've got a new president-elect coming in now in the next weekend, actually. What do you think he's going to do about this? Because a lot of people are saying that Mexico should shut down more its southern border so that more caravans can't get in. But he takes a more liberal stance on things like migration as a whole. What do you think is going to happen next?
I think he doesn't have a clear standing point on what to do with the borders itself, but he has been telling through his next foreign secretary a lot of times that he's going to try to fix the problem as a regional solution, try to create programs with the governments from Central America. But that's long-term solutions. He hasn't been like clear on what is he going to do. He presented a program that it was like an idea of what could be done, that migrants could gain access to work and to live in Mexico while their process has been made, but it's not very clear. And I think there has been contradictions among their own group. Olga Sanchez said that they hadn't accepted the pact with the U.S., but then Marcelo Ebrard said yesterday that they were thinking about letting people stay while they have their process with the U.S. So I think there's not a very clear answer on what to do.
Not a very clear answer, I think, is probably the sum of all of this. Thank you for that, Jimena. Thank you to all of our guests. That's all the time we have for now. But if you take a look at my screen here, this is where to follow them. You can see Jimena's reporting, Grace's work with Human Rights Watch, and of course, John Holman's reporting on AlJazeera.com. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you online.